Let's call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We'll start with the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Go a second.
Second.
Any discussion, questions, concerns, comments, something you want pulled? All in favor? Aye. Any against? For President, Vice President. Just so you guys know, the Distinguished Graduate Breakfast is June 6th. I'm planning to attend unless something happens, but I'm planning to attend. It really is a good, because you get the valedictorian and salutatorian and just listening to them, you know, getting prepared to leave for college and things, it's amazing. But anyway, I want to let you know that. I wanted everybody to remember Capital Projects Forum, April 29th, May 13th. Both at 6:30, both in the high school auditorium. We really should make sure we have at least 3 of each. Budget vote, May 20th
We're
for,
doing people who are already on that community group. Are we gonna
I
try?
don't think it matters as long as there's no like board conversation, like so
Yeah.
you can be there in the audience showing us support, we just can't talk about any board business.
Right, as a member of the community, you're more than welcome to sit in the back. Are you offering a tour, afterwards, if anybody wants to see any of the, middle school?
I mean, I'm happy if someone would like to.
Because was requested by somebody that saying, will they do at least a walkthrough of the hall or two to show some of the problems if there was one, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it would be much easier to explain if it were raining.
That's true.
There's still water stains. and
Yeah.
Tiles.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and there's gonna be more tiles missing because the recommendation is that any surfaces that become wet get removed and not replaced, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to, bring it up if somebody does ask you, be prepared.
But even now, it's been dry for days and we have an active drip, so.
Right. Thank you.
and also the budget vote on May 20th. Not so much, I'm sure you guys remember, but for the folks in the audience, just please come out and vote. Last thing I wanted to talk about was, the need to put a student on our board or student representation on our board. I'd like to get some ideas. I mean, I was thinking we could have a meeting with student government, see how they feel like it would work best, who they feel would do the best job. But just curious what everybody,
So that's
Mm.
actually one of the policies that's been
Right.
reviewed by the board policy committee. And there's been some discussion about like an actual application process that kiddos would have to do if they're interested. And then selection,
okay,
like a selection process also. There's only a couple of ways, or I guess there's suggested ways to do it, and one of the things we didn't want is we didn't want it to be a popularity contest. We
yeah,
wanted it to be, sort of an equitable, everybody really could do this. The one caveat we did put in was that they had to be a student in good academic standing.
okay. So if we, cause every school, Dutchess County School Board, every school was doing it slightly differently. Some schools
So I think
were
that was
having like a
important.
rotation of kids that, some were saying, these 3 kids will be there and then hopefully one of them can actually make it. there were a few that were just, sort of more on the, they picked the student and really they were just looking for a report from the student, on whatever.
So I think that was probably before it was a requirement with some like structure provided. Cause a lot of districts have just done it historically, so I think that there's gonna need to be some. Decisions made, so we just read this, I don't know.
It wasn't on.
It's not on for this
Not
night,
yet.
but, we just actually read through it at the last meeting on.
Yeah, I don't wanna, my only whatever is I don't wanna wait for, July 1st and then we, suddenly we've got a student on our board. But I'd really like to have somebody join our board before they leave for the summer. Or before summer break. So,
Yeah, and they're not required to attend any summer meetings,
Yeah.
either, right, so.
Yeah. All right. That's it. That's all I got. Chris, you got anything?
I mean, one thing, I've started to see here and there is some misinformation on social media, so I would just ask, and if it pertains to budget or the capital project or anything about the district, just reach out to the district, don't take what someone says, as fact. There's plenty of information on our website as well as you can always reach out to the district to confirm any questions that you have.
Yeah, and I mean, district.info is a great email address that will go to everyone sitting here. Person best positioned to answer the question, I will be glad to do that.
All right. Supervisor of Student Services.
Good evening, everybody. We have some exciting events coming up as soon as tomorrow, 6:30 to 7:30. There will be a parent webinar focused on post-secondary planning, the college application process, and information about FAFSA. You can access the website webinar link to my agenda, but I'll also be sending out a reminder email tomorrow. This comes with feedback from families that I've been surveying through other webinars or parent nights that I've been hosting of what they'd like to see. And this was one of the feedbacks that I received. So Dr. Watkins put me in communication with Stephanie Morrow, who is a representative for post-secondary planning, and she will be presenting to our families tomorrow. So that is exciting. Spring advisory has been rescheduled to June 3rd because March 22nd is a give back day. And the Spring Advisory Council's purpose is to, again, review data and program outcomes to assess the effectiveness of the school counseling program. I'd like to just say thank you to my school counselors and give myself a little bit of pat on the back because we've been doing a great job of revamping the school counseling plan. I've had a lot of school districts reach out to me asking for support and how we were able to put together that plan. We meet bi-weekly as a school counseling team, and we make sure that we stay up to the ASCA standards and what's expected of school counselors. So thank you to my team for staying on top of this. I would also like to thank Mr. Thomas Janowski. Our college and career fair held on April 9th was a successful event, and we featured over 40 vendors representing colleges, career paths, and scholarship opportunities for students. Thank you, MEF and Berkshire Taconic, for tabling at our event this year. It was great for students to have opportunities to explore scholarship opportunities. We are exploring an SEL screener. So in my last board update, I had mentioned that we were looking into different SEL screeners to pilot for our students, and we are piloting the BIMAS-2 social emotional learning screener with 8th grade students. Parents will receive a notification with more information. And this screener is used to assess behavioral functioning as well as social and emotional skills in children and adolescents from pre-K through age 18. So we are piloting it with our 8th grade students, and we will see how that goes, and then we will branch it out to other grade levels as goes. As for important upcoming dates, we have our annual wellness fair this year. It's really up and coming. Last year we had about 20 vendors, and we have a little over 30 vendors as of today that I've checked, and we are introducing it to our teachers as well. So during our department meeting on Monday, we will have the wellness vendors here for our teachers, but they will also participate in either a yoga session or a Socratic SEL session. And then we'll also have them be able to explore vendors, and some teachers also have the opportunity to attend Narcan training who signed up for that. So a lot happening for our staff. And as for our community, we are having a sound bath. We'll have all the vendors present as well, and a food truck for our families. And I would like to thank SAC Club because they will be providing free childcare to our families so that our families can feel that they can attend the sound bath and just have some time to explore vendors with having support of our own students mentoring our children. And lastly, on May 19th, I will have the Employee Assistance Program here briefly to share information and resources available to support our staff. And that's it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Question?
Thank you.
Comments?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Good.
So for the SEL screener, is this, I'm interested in just in the why of things. There's a lot of information and you've been doing a lot of
Absolutely.
events. But is it just something we haven't had and you feel we need, or?
Yes, I feel that we have our ruler SEL curriculum.
Mhm.
And we have been creating our pre and post surveys that have been successful. We have seen improvement, but we're really assessing the curriculum intertwined with social emotional competencies. But we want to also align it to seeing where our students are social emotionally and behaviorally, and then make those connections to MTSS, because that's the one thing that we're missing. Though we can screen them with our pre and post assessments, Ruler doesn't have an actual screener for us. So we wanted something that can actually align to other MTSS systems that we have in the district. So we're going to explore this option.
Okay. In 8th grade, because.
Because they're transitioning to high school,
Yeah,
so that's one of the big changes in their lives. And we also thought because it's May, there's testing that's occurring and Regents exams and such. We know there's also state testing at the middle school, but this date and time worked best, especially because our 6th and 7th grade students will be on trips both those days. So it was an opportunity for us to explore.
Nice. And then this mental health awareness month with the Brain and Body Coalition.
So this,
The workshops, are those during, how is that?
so this is a partnership that I built from somebody from the wellness fair and also attending Building Bridges, which is building bridges between adolescents and our adults in the community. And so Brain and Body Coalition is an organization that promotes mental health awareness, and they come to schools to provide workshops for students during class. And they provide different types of workshops where they're able to offer support and resources to help students maintain their overall wellness and understand what mental health awareness is and different types of tools and strategies to navigate. So we are able to bring them in for 6th, 7th, 8th, and our 10th grade students.
Any reason why jumped over 9 or just?
9th grade, because 9th grade has the CAPE. We have CAPE for 9th grade. So we've been giving various opportunities to our 9th grade students. We did 11th grade with the push-ins for scholarships. We've done push-ins for, I'm drawing a blank right now, but basically 10th grade, we haven't provided a lot of push-in
Okay.
opportunities. So we wanted to provide this for level.
Sounds good, thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks. Good.
Thank you.
All right. Budget report?
Yeah.
Second.
So, I'm not sure if it's fortunately or unfortunately, but we have no additional information from New York State. We have a lot of projections and maybe some educated guesses at this point as to what the state's budget is going to look like, but that's truly all it is at this point. We have a lot of people who are close to the information who are just saying that there's nothing clear coming out as to where the budget's actually going to be. And Governor Hochul has essentially said, what's the rush? So I'm not sure when we will see a state budget that will inform any information as to when we actually, what we will actually be getting in terms of funding, but here we are on the day that we have to adopt our budget, our local budget, and so I guess the good news is that there will be nothing alarmingly different in this version than any other version. Some slight improvements that we've been able to make through really, really careful decision making. And so this is what we will present to you tonight. The property report, tax report card will be transmitted to New York State on the 25th. We will have a budget at some point from the state, we don't know. But this is the annual budget that will be voted on by taxpayers in May. Very similar to previously, you will see that 76.45% of our total budget goes directly to programming, which is what we want that to be our absolute largest number by a lot. That is everything student facing, everything that has to do with educating students and providing all of the ancillary support that goes along with that. Additionally, it's anything from transportation to any type of social emotional support that our students receive, any of the health services, academic intervention, summer instructional programming, all of that goes into the program component. The administrative component of our budget is the smallest. It's intended to be so. It's actually down just a touch from the last meeting. Again, that's with some strategic working, doing the best we can to cut absolutely anywhere that we can, to make sure that whatever money we do have going into next school year, as much as possible, is going directly towards our students and supports for them. So this is all salaries and benefits for the school and central administration and staff, supplies, materials, anything that is parallel to the school administration. Central office and Board of Education, again, Board of Education members do not get paid, but there are expenses associated with keeping them trained and just organizations that the board does belong to. This is any services related to payroll, human resources, benefits, and central data processing. Any of our audit and legal services all come out of the administrative component, as well as the process of tax collection, purchasing, and public information services. So all of that falls under the umbrella of administration. The third part of our budget is the capital component. I do want to say publicly that this is not to be confused with the capital project. It is something that I know people are very confused about. This is our operating budget. So this is the money that goes into our buildings and keeping them open on an annual and everyday basis. This is not related to any capital expenses related to our bond referendum. So this is salaries and benefits for custodial maintenance on buildings and ground staff. This is any materials or supplies that go along with any of the work that they do, as well as bonds and capital lease expenses associated with our facilities, any court judgments, and anything to do with utilities or rental costs. As we know, utilities is something that's just skyrocketed over the last couple of years. And so we've done a really good job of managing that, even in bad circumstances with difficult buildings to manage. And so it is the maintenance and improvement costs for all district facilities. So just to depict this in two other ways, you have a pie chart there that shows exactly what I've just mentioned. Those figures are just rounded for easy understanding. And then in the chart on the right, you will notice that they are just there at the bottom. And again, we're very proud of the fact that we've kept our administrative allocations to one of the lowest in the past 7 years at this point.
Okay, so this is, again, just a general breakdown of our expense projections. Column on the left gives you the categories. Those are our state reporting categories. Those numbers, the alphanumeric designation there on the left-hand side. All the way to the right, you'll see the two columns show the year-to-year change, both in dollars and in percentages. This year, once again, we did move some money between categories, so there's some double-digit movement, but I think the most important numbers at the bottom. We're able to keep our year-to-year budget growth just at about $1 million, or $1,074,576, or a year-to-year increase of just 3.11%. Okay? And as we've talked about before, we have to balance revenues with expenses, right? So we can't just tell you we need to spend money without telling you where it's coming from. And as Caroline said earlier, a lot of the guesswork, or a lot of the state aid projections is guesswork at this time. But there's a number of variables to that state aid package. And so I think throughout this planning process, we were very strategic and intentional and conservative with what we think those numbers are. So we fully expect some of them to go up. We would love it if all of them went up, but we did not budget that way. So we're pretty conservative with what we expect. And because of that, what you're going to see is at that very bottom, or the second to last line where it says fund balance appropriation. We've talked about this in previous discussions. That is the money that we put forward from the current year budget for all the wonderful things that we planned for that did not happen. Contingencies, unknowns, right? We have to build them in order for us to be able to tell the public that we can provide a fair and appropriate public education to any student that comes to our district. We have to be ready for things to happen that we may not be aware of right now in April that can happen at any time next year. So using some surplus funds from this year to the tune of about 1.8 million, we're able to balance next year's budget. So I think one of the most glaring questions is, well, if the state aid package comes back better than we anticipate, what happens to the budget? And the answer is that line item will shrink in our favor. So what I put forward in front of you today, what we're sharing is our revenue projection based on the January state aid numbers. So everything here is as if the state aid picture is not changing. And if the state aid picture does not change in our favor at all, it's going to take 1.85 million of this year's money to balance next year's budget. We fully anticipate that number to come down. So what you see is that annualized year-to-year increase of 111,088, which I didn't realize those numbers are just interesting. But we fully expect that number to be south of $100,000 in the delta from this year to next year. We're hoping that it actually goes negative. If what we think is going to happen, what we're hoping is going to happen actually comes through. And again, not everything, but if most of the aid that we're looking at increases, we'd like to see that number go negative. But in full transparency, we have to plan for it as constituted.
Can I ask a question? Can I interrupt you for a second, just for anybody that might? Is there any deadline as to when the state has to give us a number or?
April 1.
April 1st is
That-
the state budget is due April 1st.
Which, for those of us that don't have a calendar in front of us, that's
3 weeks.
already passed. Okay, thank you.
I do want to follow up with what Jennifer just said. It's costing the taxpayers, which is every one of us here and everybody who may be watching or listening, $40,000 per day, according to New York State Assembly member Steve Hawley. So every day since April 1, is another $40,000 each day. It is costing us taxpayers. Thank you.
These are all great points. And I think, part of this process is us understanding and trying to communicate, how does this affect our community, right? How does this affect our taxpayers? How does this uncertainty affect the taxpayers? And so we're going to jump from the bottom lines all the way to the top. Real property taxes, right? As part of the process tonight, the board is not just going to approve the budget, you're also going to approve the property tax report card, and effectively you're going to approve the tax levy. Okay, the tax levy for us here in Millbrook, roughly 73% of our money comes from taxpayers, give or take. So that's our guaranteed revenue stream, the tax levy that's approved by the Board of Education. So what happens with the state budget? Well, if the state budget changes and it's not in our favor, we know we have a baseline revenue of 27.7. The state aid package comes up short, our overall revenues are shorted, we would have to manage expenses in parallel to that decrease in revenue. So there's no I just want to be clear to our taxpayers watching at home, there's nothing that the state's going to do with our aid package that's going to affect their taxes for next school year, right? We're setting the tax levy at the tax cap maximum. We're going to get as much revenue as we can from our constituency. And then we're gonna hope that our state aid package comes in it makes us as whole as possible to complement that. And if it can't, then we would have to manage expenses accordingly. Okay, but again, these figures are the most current ones that we have to date.
And so this is a review slide. The E&L teacher was added during the school year because of additional students, nearly doubling that population in about a 3-week span, right at the beginning of school. And also, one of the things that is very important to us is the safety of our student athletes. And so we have added some additional allocations for the replacement of obsolete athletic equipment, and also really focusing on creating a cycle for replacement so that we can plan ahead for the things that will need to be replaced. Because those are some, fairly big ticket items. And then one thing that we have been discussing repeatedly is what would the reductions to our budget look like? We are very happy to say that nobody that is currently employed will be in any way adversely affected by this budget. And so really what we're looking at is the potential additional FTEs. There are a couple of resignations for retirement purposes that have happened that we have not yet filled. And we're looking at creative ways to use staff that is already in existence to fill that. Should additional aid revenue not come through from the state. That would be the worst case scenario at this point, is that we would not be filling one of those positions. And like Elliot said, we're looking at the fund balance coming down with any additional monies. All services will be provided to children. Children will not be impacted. It's just gonna take a lot of creativity and people being offered to teach additional classes in their schedule for additional money. But nobody who's currently employed will be adversely affected by the budget. And that's really something that we had said from the beginning was our goal. And there were some pretty dicey moments where we were getting a lot of negative information. But so far we have on good authority that we are in a very, very good spot and that things will only improve regardless of what comes out of Albany. And so there's been additional reductions to software subscriptions that were fairly substantial by going through that with a fine-tooth comb. There were reductions in other areas, again, and that's some creative programming that we really reworked and looked at from multiple different perspectives to try and do the best we can to keep everyone employed and everyone educated. So that is where we are. And then we've made additional reallocations within the budget. So we had a conversation before the last meeting in which we had said, there was a time where we carried a portion of certain salaries within the within grants. And so we would never carry full salaries and grants. That would be very dangerous should grants not come through. But we had shifted away from that, and so we've shifted back towards that for a certain, portion of several salaries throughout the district. And we're confident in that. Those are IDEA funds, and so we're not concerned about them being impacted. And so we've also established, budget codes to be able to track program expenses related directly to the education of students learning English as a new language. We've also done the same with capital project preparation so that we have clear budget codes related to the capital project. And then we've obviously increased funding for building operations, maintenance and repairs because as we have learned, there's a new obstacle every day with that. And so we have to have money on hand to be able to address some of those issues. Even something, as recent as like the mold testing, couple of rounds of mold testing, while none of those individually are super expensive, they add up, right? And so having to address those things as they come, we need to have money on hand to do that.
So summarizing what these changes are, I think it was important, we wanted to be able to communicate as much of what that $1 million budget to budget increase looks like. You all this talk about conservative budgeting, so where did $1 million come from? So we wanted to give you just the I guess for lack of a better term, highlights or the big ticket items that are making up the largest portion of that $1 million increase year over year. So you'll see that just about a quarter of it, almost 22% of that is contractually obligated by salary and benefits. So that 233,000, that's going right to our people. That's staff increases, contractual obligations, and the cost of their benefits also going up. And we just wanted to share that is the net of a companion decrease of $285,000. That's almost $286,000 of reductions. So that's what's left in terms of those increases. That's the net increase. We've also experienced a $124,000 increase to facilities codes. But again, as Caroline said, that is mostly the cost of utilities driving that number. That's our fuel oil number, our electricity, our propane, things of that nature. And we have $170,000 in projected increases to pupil transportation costs. And that one, we went around a whole lot of times with our first student, our transportation contractors. We've looked at reducing the number of runs. We've already shortened from last year to this year. We've reduced by 1 run, 10%. We had 10 runs, we're down to 9 runs. We're trying to trim and combine runs as much as possible, again, in ways that don't negatively affect our children, but can just save us some overhead. So those are the big ticket numbers. And then BOCES related expenses were reduced by an additional $290,000. So we weren't just looking at trimming what we spend in-house, but also what we spend regionally with the BOCES. Significant changes in state aid. So we've talked about this again, and this is not new news because this is all based on those January projections that we're still operating under. But our total aid package has been reduced by $39,000. Irrespective of certain numbers that are naturally inflated, like when they list the state aid package, they give you your maximum pre-K aid. We know we don't get there because it's enrollment driven. However, the per pupil number is supposed to be going up, so we're hopeful that that isn't as reduced as we think it would be. There's also foundation aid, which went up $57,000. We're hopeful that that number goes up by about 50% minimally, as both sides of Albany have agreed to that in one way or another. So we're hoping that that stays consistent and that goes up. But again, the actual aid received versus the aid we projected last April in the current fiscal year is down about $212,000. So in the 3 years we've been doing this budget planning process together, that's been a pretty consistent number. Our state aid, our actual state aid versus our projected state aid has been coming up short by about $250,000 annually. So even in that revenue projection, we have to predict that some of that money is not going to come through, although other revenue streams do offset to some extent. We just need to be mindful that just because somebody tells us we're getting money doesn't mean we're getting all of it. So again, this is a recap with just updated figures, but we'll talk about the contingency budget. If the budget does not pass, the board has the option to put up a revised budget or go directly to contingency. This slide just explains what contingency is. And again, we'll say it as briefly and clearly as possible for those watching at home. The district can only collect taxes based on voter authorization. If the voters do not authorize this new tax levy, we have to operate under the previously authorized tax levy, which is the tax levy for the current 24-25 school year. The projected increase to the tax levy is $707,900. And so in a contingency budget, we have to reduce our expenses minimally by that number because that will reflect the minimal decrease in revenue. When we calculate this, we look at a ratio of the admin portion of the budget to the program portion. So we remove capital altogether. So we remove the physical, structural, operating, maintenance expenses, and we just look at program versus admin. And we have to use the smaller of the admin portion out of those two in the current year or the projected year. In our case, the current year number is smaller, and that's the restriction that we're going to be operating under. And so there's a couple of things that have to happen immediately. In a contingent budget, all salary increases for non-union staff were removed. It's the first line that you see in reductions. The next one is all equipment. So as Caroline stated, we are very much intending to replace some much needed safety equipment relating to our athletic programs. Unfortunately, that all has to come out by law if we go to contingency. And so you'll see $250,000 in equipment removed from the budget. We went in and made some really tough choices about things that we could do without potentially for a year. and in doing so identified an additional $215,000 of things. And I'll say things that are not directly student facing, and you've heard that expression come up a few times in this presentation. We're doing everything we can to keep all of our dollars facing children. But should we go directly to contingency, you'll see that we've figured out 490,000 worth of reductions, but we've got to come up with 707,000 worth of reductions. So should the board direct us to go directly to contingency, we have to go back and sharpen pencils and find another $217,000 minimally in further expense reductions. And it's going to be really hard to do that and not have it affect existing staff and student facing staff. So we're not trying to make threats or be doom and gloom. The reality is we've trimmed everywhere else. And the only other place to find that 217 is going to be people and people that are working with kids. So here's a budget at a glance, just again for those at home and for the people in the room. Our budget increase is projected to be $1,074,576 for a proposed budget of $35,649,651 with a 3.11 budget to budget increase. The tax levy is proposed to be $27,782,136, a levy to levy difference of $707,900 or 2.61%. That is at the maximum, but within the New York tax cap guidelines. So with that, what you will see different from our previous presentations is because tonight the board is adopting the budget, we also provided a draft of the property tax report card. That is a further detailed illustration of the tax cap calculations. It also lists out our reserve funds as they are currently in terms of interest accrued and what we project them to be at June 30. Those are estimates because again, the markets can shift over the next 90 days. But we wanted to provide a draft of the property tax report card, and there is a full budget workbook in your PDF attachment as well. We wanted to be as transparent as possible with the board. If we're asking you to vote on the budget, we wanted you to have the full document for your review. So at this time, if there's any questions about anything we presented or anything else in the documents we've sent to you.
Question?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is to, a motion to approve proposition 1 for the 25-26 school budget. A motion. So moved. Do a second. Any questions or comments or concerns? A lot of concerns, but
Well, yeah, a lot of concerns. It'd be nice to have a state budget, but I guess not. However, if we did not decide to adopt a budget, I am sure the state would jump up and down. How dare we violate the budget deadline, but they can do what they want and they don't have to be transparent and they can do whatever they want. And when they pass it, they just show it to the people and say, this is what you've got. Where here, when Elliott's and our superintendent have went over it, is transparent as totally transparent over 3 times before we vote. And but keep electing the same representatives to Albany. So doesn't matter what party, over and over and over. Keep re-electing the same people that keep costing us, the taxpayers, money. Thank you.
anything else from anybody?
I'll just put an exclamation point on that. It's up to, you know, people to hold other people accountable. So again, whether it's one party or another, it's ridiculous. These are kids. This is their education. This is where they come every day. And I think it's a shame that they can't get their act together.
Yeah, and
Sometime.
from what I understand, the issues aren't even necessarily financial issues at this point. It's some of the other stuff like the heat index bill and the cell phone policies and that's holding up a lot of stuff.
And they get their act together.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Next is the, property tax report card. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Questions, concerns, comments? If the public hasn't seen it, it is in the agenda. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right. Can't seem to,
No, Word docs is.
Word docs is locked up.
It's just being a little crazy right now.
oh, here we go. Oh, no, we don't. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
that's about
so
it.
tonight there are two 3-year terms at BOCES, on the BOCES board, and there's a one seat, which is basically to take over from April 23rd through the end of the school year. What we're gonna do is have Cheryl go around, question each, basically, do you vote for this person? Do you vote for that person? So Cheryl, you want?
So let's start with, Chris LaBelle, I'll go that way. And I'm just gonna do each person who's on the ballot and we'll go around
Okay.
each time. So for Ralph. Tremendo, thank you.
I'm just saying yes or no.
Yes, yes, you,
Okay, no.
Tina?
No.
Howard?
No.
David?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mary?
Very nice, I like it. Thank you to everyone on the board for that. Yes,
Chris? Mark?
Yes.
No.
No.
David?
Yes.
Jennifer? No. Chris?
Yes.
why don't we just
I think it was the same.
come
one.
to me and I'll just vote. No,
Chris, LaBelle, Bryce?
No.
Tina?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
David?
No.
Jen?
Yes.
Chris?
No.
Carrie?
no,
Judy?
Judy? Yes.
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
David?
Yeah.
Jen?
Yes.
Chris?
No.
Carrie?
no,
Gully?
Yes.
Yes.
Tina? Howard?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And Perry?
yes.
So we have put forward Ralph Gimento.
Yeah.
And Judy. And Gully. And so I will certify this and send it over to BOCES tomorrow morning.
And which one goes, is it the?
It will be a combined from all of the,
And then
districts,
that's.
and then
that's
they'll-
the lowest
yes,
number, okay,
yeah, they'll figure
Alright.
that out, yeah.
very good, thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Budget, do I have a motion to approve the BOCES budget that they, presented?
Yeah, I presented the last meeting.
Do a motion,
So moved.
do a second.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Just to clarify, they're not required to do this similar tax cap calculation.
I don't believe so.
There's no tax cap on the BOCES because they're funded by us, so
Right.
it's a pass-through expense from our taxpayers.
And anything left over, they have to
I
keep
have a
back.
problem with that.
Well, yeah, but if there's anything left.
I know.
Yeah. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right. Financials and warrants, do I have a motion? Go to second,
Second.
questions? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, tonight's the first, excuse me, first reading of 5151, with revision. Any comments or questions for, I mean, we're not doing a motion on this, or are we?
Yeah, not that one.
All right. Next one is,
The corresponding regulation.
yeah, the 5151 R. We don't have a motion on that either. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. Next is 5153, first reading with revisions. Any questions? Okay. First reading, student health, 5420. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. First reading of the regulation, 5420-R. Questions? Okay. Next is 8113. First reading, it's the extreme heat condition.
I think it was 5605, the voter.
They didn't do that?
No.
Okay, never mind. First reading of 5605, student voter registration and pre-registration. Questions, comments?
And did we confirm that that did happen?
Schedule.
Okay.
Now we go to 8113. Extreme heat condition days. Questions? And first reading for 110.
That would work, yes, so
We
this,
have a motion
we're
on that.
requesting to leave the first reading, and so, wait a second reading, sorry. This is, a parallel policy regarding Title IX, as you know, we've updated it for students. This is the corresponding policy for employees.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mhm.
Okay, remember,
Don't you have to waive the second reading?
it's in the.
It's in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything from anybody? All in favor? Any against? Okay. Public comment question period. All right, enrollment is there. Any questions on it? No, the SIR.
That's
not
not-
there.
yeah.
Oh, it's not there, okay. All right, future agenda items, there we go. The only thing to keep in mind is we're gonna, if I get around to it this weekend or first thing next week, start the super eval process. This seems to take forever. Next is, executive session, just so anybody that's listening or anybody that's in the room knows that, just because we go to executive session and discuss personnel primarily does not mean the meeting is over. When the executive session exits, we have to take any action, we have to take that in public. So we'll be back, with an updated agenda if there are actions to be taken. So with that, do I have a motion to go to executive session? So second? Second. All in favor?
I
Any against? All right,